come out, and it has come out to me. I remember her in the band, in the percussion line, or on the basketball court, and she was always seemed to be steady as a rock, unemotional. But toward the end of this year, I think she started selling bracelets with Lauren Hadigan and a few other things. And then on the first day of graduation practice, she drops on me that she wants to get up here and dance. Of all 87 of them, she would have been the last one that I wanted. It didn't work out that way. But we're going to have our first ever, we're going to pretend like we're at a baseball game. We're going to have our first ever walk-up music for graduation speech. So, let's just see if this will play. So give it a couple seconds before you stand up. All right? You can dance if you want. Elizabeth and Gieske.
I never said a speech before, so I'm just going to start with the basics. Thank you for coming. I'd like to congratulate all my fellow graduates on graduating in 2014. 14, 6 plus 8, 7 times 2. Troy Bolton's basketball number. The average test score in Mr. Clark's class. The exits are to your left and to your right. In the event of a fire drill, which may happen, please go down to the football field and stand on a line. It doesn't really matter which line, since they change every time. Just remember that Mr. Zimmerman's in charge. Even when there's snow on the ground and you can't tell where the lines are. I realize that half of you won't pay attention to what I say, or you might zone in and zone out, so I've asked Ashley and Allie to play guitar while I speak. Maybe your boredom might be a little bit more bearable. Ever since I heard of this valedictorian, I really wanted to become one. Well, I managed to muscle my way through. I had some scares along the way, like when I checked my final Latin grade, and the final exam said 9%, as in 9 out of 100. But it was just a typo. That could have ruined my GPA, but it turned out fine. After all that hard work over a series of 4 years, I'm rewarded with this honor, valedictorian, and public speaking. That's right, the reward for all that effort is the #1 fear in America. Maybe it's a second next to the AP exams and the ACT. Speaking of the ACT, Mrs. Rash, so one time and there was maple syrup all over the walls, and then we justice, and then so then we ate the pink jelly, and then we had and then we all did great on the ACT. Then I did a pretty accurate job. I have no idea what went on half that class, but I know I got crazy. Well, there's actually no prompt for this speech. They just asked me to write one. Actually, they never asked me to write one. It just showed up on the itinerary, so here I am. I don't know what it's exactly for either. A letter of gratitude, maybe a reflective narrative, comical relief. Or maybe it's just a time for all the seniors to fix our caps while no one's looking. I decided to follow the steps I learned in 4th grade when it comes to writing. Step 1, address your audience. I suppose my audience is mostly parents of the graduating seniors, And I realized that many of those parents still have children at Beechwood. So here's my advice to you. Be a proud parent. This means to avoid comparing your kid to someone else. Newsflash, there's always going to be that other kid. And don't put so much pressure on them. And if you're afraid that without pressure, your kid won't succeed, that's not always true. I know my parents actually encouraged me to get a bad grade and don't do my homework. True story. And look where I am now. My advice is to go beyond being proud. Do you ever feel like your kid isn't getting the recognition they deserve? Here's an insight. Sometimes we feel that way, that we're not being appreciated. So parents, give that recognition. Tell your kid that you realize that he or she worked their butts off all year. And I'll tell you something. I'm now embarrassed and ashamed for feeling this way, but during the college signing for academics, I was hurt that I didn't have an academic teacher speak for me and say how hard I worked all year and how it was a pleasure to have me around. And I went home feeling neglected, which is completely ridiculous, and my parents told me so. But you know what they also did? As I sat there sulking, they gave me the recognition I felt I deserved. They said, I've never been more proud of you in my life, which meant a lot to me. And then they continued to compliment me when I said it should be prouder, not more proud. I don't know if you noticed, but Mrs. Rash made that mistake in her. I think this idea can be applied to teachers as well. If you know a student that has worked like ridiculously hard all throughout the year and finally got the test score they were looking for, I want you to congratulate them. A little recognition goes a long way. I want you to understand that every student has different goals. I remember how Victoria worked so hard throughout the year in chemistry, always going to Mrs. Haggard before school and asking for questions. And she finally got the test score she was looking for. Maybe it wasn't the grade I might have been looking for, but I have never seen Mrs. Haggard prouder about getting a B before. And Victoria seemed to glow because of it, and it was amazing. And she continued to work hard the rest of the year. I'd also like to address my fellow seniors. I know we have such great talent in our grade. Maybe not me, but I know you guys are talented. As Mrs. Haggard has probably mentioned about 50 times already, Kara has got accepted to GEM. And Maddie is going to the Ohio State. And Lauren Hannigan is going to find the cure to cancer. And I'm going to NKU. Just kidding, I'm really excited. We've all gotten so far, but there's still more to go. Embrace it. Never let up, never be complacent, never say, I don't even care anymore. Always push yourself, always look ahead, always kindle that drive inside you. Convince yourself that your best has not been reached. Let your past failures influence your future successes. Turn your disadvantages into your advantage. And let me illustrate that last point. Let your disadvantage become your advantage. When I was younger, I had a disadvantage of having a speech impediment, which would be very difficult at this moment if I still had that. I had difficult learning since I couldn't communicate. I had trouble finding the right word to describe certain things. Certain words to describe certain things. And it was quite apparent that I was not the smartest. To put this in perspective, I will read sentences that I spoke in the year 2002, ones that my mother wrote down on the back of an envelope and kept all these years. And I will speak like I did at that time. Where is them? We was very quiet and we didn't know that I was there. I told every color and she gifted to me. I know all the English teachers must be cringing right now. My perseverance to catch up with the other kids grew strong, and my focus grew sharper since I had to concentrate on what I was saying and how I was saying it. I had to pay special attention to detail, and I gained the desire to improve myself. I eventually caught up with the rest of my grade, maybe I even pulled ahead. But I worked just as hard, because there's never a reason for me not to. So, disadvantages are advantages to those who don't use excuses. So don't use excuses. Instead, use whatever is holding you back to push you forward. In my closing statements, I'd just like to reflect on how much I learned at Beechwood. Like how I perfected my ability to procrastinate. Like last night when I was going to write this speech, and I convinced myself, Elizabeth, you don't have to write it now, you do your best writing at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I texted Jessie, and she also had to push her speech off until last night. Or when Jimmy learned how to lose his backpack every day. Or Lauren and Valerie, who learned to canoe in circles and then capsize the thing. Or how I had to explain to CJ how to go to the bathroom in a dress during Gender Bender Day. Or how Mrs. Rash learned what this meant. Or how the entire soccer team had to learn how to walk with crutches because of all the injuries. I also learned how to follow directions, like when Mr. Zimmerman asked for my speech and I conveniently left out half of it. Or like when he told me to keep the speech under 3 minutes. With that in mind, I'd just like to finish by saying, this could be the start of something new, and it feels so right to be here with you. And now, looking into your eyes, I feel in my heart the start of something new. Thank you.
All right, next on our program.